The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
History is being carried into the future in the town of Comox with a viewing platform planned to be built on the foundation of Mack Laing's old house Shakesides in Mack Laing Nature Park. The outdoor space will honor the historic figure's life, legacy, and wishes for future generations. But the decision is a hot topic of debate in the Comox Valley, and the question still remains, what will be done with the old historic house? Will Shakesides be demolished to make way for the new ode to the past, or will it be relocated to a new site where it can be restored and maintained? I am your local journalism initiative reporter Heather Watson, reporting for CHLY and CVOX in the Comox Valley, and this is Midcoast Morning. To learn more about Mack Laing, the Shakesides building, and how we got here, I spoke with three figures of varying connections to the man and the park he left behind. Jordan Wall is the Chief Administrative Officer of the town of Comox, who have been working with the Attorney General to determine the best course to honor Mack Laing's wishes, using his trust to share the land he loved with the people of Comox. Craig Freeman is a director with the Merville Community Association, who are offering a new location for the Shakesides house to be moved to if funding is raised in time. Matt Vandervoort is curator of the Comox Valley Museum and Archives and is intimately familiar with the many belongings of the late Mack Laing, which are held in the museum. Before we hear what each has to say, it is critical to note that the land Mack Laing lived, worked, and built his home on is part of the unceded ancestral territory of the Comox First Nation. Shakesides House and the Mack Laing Nature Park are built atop the Great Comox Midden, a site of significant cultural importance. Representatives of the Comox First Nation were not available for comment during the production of this news story. Now let's investigate the question of Shakesides. To move or not to move?
My name is Craig Freeman, and I'm a director with the Merville Community Association, the MCA, and I have been involved with the Shakesides affair, trying to get the building moved from Comox out to Merville and onto the grounds of the Merville Hall, where we feel it can be redeveloped into a caretaker's residence and museum that would discuss the historic significance of Hamilton Mack Laing.
Freeman and the Merville Community Association got involved several years ago, in 2016, when Freeman first suggested in a letter to the Comox Valley Record that the building be moved to Merville instead of being demolished. He had the idea that the 3-acre Merville Hall site, which has already adopted 2 heritage buildings, could become a heritage village of sorts. Shakesides would join the already transplanted church and manse and would be used as accommodations for a live-in caretaker.
All we were doing is saying, hey, we can provide a site for the building. If you want to move it, you can move it here.
Freeman's idea was shelved for some time as a group of Comox locals hoping to save the building challenged the town of Comox in court. In 2023, the Supreme Court of BC approved the town's application to replace the building with an educational viewing platform. In January, Freeman approached the town of Comox directly with his proposition.
And since then, I did another delegation where I met with the council and proposed that we had a number of things already accomplished and that we had an estimate from Nickel Brothers to move the building. We had permission from the Agricultural Land Commission to site the building on Merville Hall grounds. And we had encouragement from the CVRD, the Comox Valley Regional District, to apply for a permit and do the job.
Why did you feel like this solution was preferable to demolition?
I'm a big advocate of heritage. I think preserving our past is very important because it kind of helps to define us in the present and going forward in the future. And really, it looks like getting that building to the Merville Hall site, there's a number of contractors and other people that have expressed an interest in working pro bono to renovate the building. So it makes a lot of sense to have that building on site renovated because the Merville Hall can use a caretaker. So this would become the caretaker's residence, and we could also celebrate the history of Mack Laing. So it for us, it filled two needs, and it would also serve the town of Comox because, whoop, there goes the building. It's gone. We don't have to think about it anymore.
Freeman says that if the building is moved, it will be placed on blocks and a concrete foundation, then renovated from the outside in.
And really, so many people have said, oh, I've got a good solution for that building, a match, but things can be renovated. Look what happened in Paris. They just opened the Notre Dame Cathedral after a very cataclysmic fire, and they've made this beautiful building beautiful once again. So things can be renovated, and we've already shown that. The church that we moved onto the Merville Hall site was in even worse condition than the Shakesides building. So I'm pretty confident we can do a good job of turning that into a completely livable space.
Freeman says that both times the Merville Community Association presented delegations to the town of Comox, the reception was positive, but after the fact, decisions were made to move ahead with the demolition. This largely comes down to a matter of money. Freeman says the cost to move will be around $160,000 to $170,000. He says that they have an injection from the CVRD and expect the funds that would have gone toward the demolition as well. According to the town of Comox, that amount is limited to $35,000. That limit is set by the Attorney General, who represents Mack Laing's trust, and is based on the town's original estimate when seeking trust variation. The Merville Community Association is also receiving loans to make up the difference. They have a GoFundMe campaign set up as well to help raise the funds required to complete the move. Freeman and the Merville Community Association have received support and positive feedback from members of the Comox community who, up until the court ruling, were fighting to keep Shakesides House in place and turn it into a natural history museum, as Mack Laing's will suggested.
I think that the people that were pro-Shakesides were more than happy to see the building saved, and to have it relocated to another community didn't seem to bother them too much because they saw the inherent value of the building in the actual building, and to move it to another location, the building is being saved, and the building can also house a museum dedicated to Mack Laing. I think that this episode is kind of pointing out the sort of the short-sightedness of communities that want to get rid of the old stuff and want to get rid of their history. And I think by kind of standing up and saying, no, we want to preserve this stuff, it's showing that there is community support for heritage. When everything is brand new, it's pretty boring. But when you can delve into the past, there's all sorts of interesting stories that can come out.
But what are those stories? Who was Mack Laing? And what is his legacy that the community is hoping to protect? Let's find out after this brief message.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada and generous listeners like you. Support and grow our nonprofit newsroom project today at chly.ca/donate with a monthly or one-time donation. With your support, we can expand Midcoast Morning from 2 to 3 original programs per week to cover local news, current affairs, and arts and culture.
My name is Matt Vandervoort. I am the curator of the Comox Archive and Museum Society. I have an intimate knowledge of Hamilton Mack Laing because around 1998 we opened up, and the town of Comox actually held many of his pieces in their archives and storage area. And then when we got our space, we were gifted a treasure trove of Mack Laing's items to share. At the beginning, at the Comox Archive Museum Society, we were almost a Mack Laing museum at that point because we just had an enormous amount of his works. We still do. His original paintings, journals, slides. We just have an abundance of Mack Laing's things that I've become very familiar with over the year and a half I've worked here.
Fantastic. And for anyone who's never heard of him before, can you tell us just briefly who is Mack Laing?
Well, in his 99 years, that's hard to get down to one word. Hunter, ornithologist, bike riding enthusiast, mountain climber, teacher, principal, builder of homes, farmer. He was probably one of the most prolific people the Valley's ever seen. Not born here, he was born in Ontario, but his time here was insurmountable about just exposing Comox for its natural beauty, especially with his ornithology. He was such a lover of birds. He published so many articles across Canada that really brought light to how special Comox was, especially like this part of the West Coast. And he really gifted us with just sharing his pictures and his articles throughout Canada and really putting the spotlight on Comox.
And you were talking about how at the Comox Museum you have so many objects of his. Do you have a particular item that is your favorite?
So one of my favorite things here that I found in the back storage area was his original palette. When he would do all of his pictures on or all of his original artwork. It's beautiful, and I kind of found it hidden away in our archive. So I have it on permanent display here at the museum. So if anyone would ever like to check it out, it's pretty incredible, and you can learn a lot about Hamilton Mack Laing when you're here.
That's so cool. I definitely want to come see that. You were talking about how he was a really prolific figure in the Comox Valley. It sounds like he did a lot of various different things. I'm curious, was he engaged in the community or was he somewhat of a recluse?
I wouldn't say he was a recluse. He was definitely not very political. I haven't read anything about him getting too involved in local politics because he was so busy. He was just... you can ride from the West Coast to the East Coast of Canada down to the state. That's what he'd rather do than doing anything in the public office. But everybody knew who he was. All of his neighbors know. People in the valley that knew him 40 years ago can still remember him in depth, remember every story that they were with him. He left a big mark here in the valley.
And when you're talking about that mark that he left, what do you think is the most distinctive part of his legacy?
I think there's just more than one thing. It wasn't just the ornithology. He's contributed to, I think, over 100 different museums across Canada. I think it was just the person who he was, just this go-getter. After his wife passed away, I believe he was in his 50s or early 60s. His memory of that first house, the Baybrook house, kind of left not a great mark because all he could think of was his wife. And in the 60s, he built by hand a second home, the Shakesides home. He was just a man of all trades, and I think that's what people are going to remember going forward.
And I wonder, hearing that story, if there are any other stories that to you find particularly fun or interesting about him that you think would really intrigue people about Mack Laing.
I have so many books here. I love the motorcycle trip across Canada and through the States. Like back then in the 20s, like that, it wasn't unheard of, but you had to be a really strong character to kind of make that trip, and especially climbing up Mount Logan in the Yukon in the 20s. That's the second highest peak in Canada. And to do that now is difficult, but to do that in the 20s, there's a great book called Capturing the Summit, and it involves his journey at Mount Logan. People lost like toes, they lost fingers, but they made it all the way up to the top. And I just think that's so incredible.
So he was like a big adventure spirit.
He was a big adventure spirit. The ornithologist, Alan Brooks, because Mack Laing did a lot of his living by hunting birds and displaying them in museums or at schools or whoever wanted a stuffed bird. And Alan Brooks, who was one of our biggest ornithologists and studier of birds, said, you need to see Comox. What did he say? It's very birdie here.
That's fantastic. Is there anything you want to add that I didn't ask about that you think people should know?
Yeah, you betcha. I just think in Mack's 99 years, there's too much to say over a radio interview between the ornithology, the hunting, the teaching, the motorbiking enthusiast. I can go on and on. Please come to the Comox Archive Museum Society. We are the holders of many copies of Babe Brooks' Life's Best Adventure. It's a lot of his original writing in there. It's a great book to read. We have many for sale here at the Comox Archive Museum Society, and it's a great read about a very interesting, great Canadian.
Now that we know a little more about Mack Laing's legacy, let's hear what the town of Comox is doing to protect it.
Thanks for having me on. My name is Jordan Wall. I'm the CAO, or the town manager for the town of Comox, and I've been involved in the project for the last 4 years since I took over this role, and really trying to work with the provincial government, work with interested stakeholders like KFN, community groups, and council to try and find a way to move forward on this project in a way that is respectful of both the heritage and gift that was given to us by Mack Laing, as well as acknowledging the extensive First Nations history in the area. It is an archaeologically rich area that is of significant importance and concern to KFN to ensure that it's developed in a way that doesn't end up destroying potential archaeological artifacts that may be in the area. And because of that, we want to make sure that we're doing this project in a way that doesn't result in damage to those potential artifacts and leaves a project in place that is not going to result in further harm to the area.
And I'm curious about how this conversation has gone, because from my research that I've been doing into how this has kind of progressed, it almost seems as though that conversation wasn't initiated with Comox First Nation until they stepped forward and stated a concern. Can you speak a little bit to that sort of conversation between the town and Comox and how that has gone throughout this process?
So I can say since I came onto this file now, since I came onto the town, that we've had a fulsome dialogue with Comox First Nations. It's my understanding that what you said is correct, as there was a time that our consultative process with KFN wasn't where it should have been or where it needed to be, and that KFN had to raise a number of concerns that we didn't actively go out and ask them for their thoughts and opinions first, which was a misstep by the town. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about that time period because I wasn't here, but I can say since I have been here, it has been a major focus for the town of Comox and a major strategic driver from council for us to work towards building and repairing our relationship with KFN. And I can say from my perspective, I think we've made a lot of progress on that, which is shown not just in this project, but a number of other projects that we continue to work with them and meet with them and consult with them on.
When it comes to the matter of the Mack Laing Trust, Jordan Wall explains that the history is a little more nuanced than the public may perceive.
Where this got a little bit complicated, and I think what's important for people to understand, to know what's happening in this situation, is that Mack Laing actually left the town two separate gifts. So originally he left a gift to the town for his land that was going to be turned into a nature park, which is the nature park that everybody's come to know and enjoy. And then later on, near the end of his life, he left a sum of money to the town. And the intent of that second gift was the money was to be used to turn his home into a natural history museum. And the town at the time accepted the gift, but it was almost immediately after that they realized that the amount of money that had been left over, or that had been left to the town, well, very appreciated, was not enough and not near enough in order to turn it into a natural history museum that could continue to operate.
Wall explains that over the decades, a number of public processes and committees have been struck to determine possibilities for the future of Shakesides. He says that various different recommendations were made and consultations took place with the provincial government, the Attorney General's office, and Comox First Nation. This all led to the decision to remove the current building and build a viewing platform.
And the reason we ended up with that solution was we wanted to do something that was going to result in the least amount of ground disturbance as possible, given the archaeological deposits in the area. And we wanted to do something that would reflect what Mack Laing valued out of that property, which was not just the house. He spoke extensively about the view that he had from his house overlooking the bay and Goose Spit. And so this viewing platform seemed to be a way where we could honor both his legacy while respecting our need to leave the area as undisturbed as possible. And along with that, we're planning to install natural history panels to educate the public, which was one of Mack Laing's goals, was to educate the public about the natural history in the area, as well as letting people know about Mack Laing himself and Comox First Nations connection to the area. So we feel that this solution that we reached through this, through the long consultative process that we had and ultimately was applied for at the court, who gave us who changed the will in order to allow us to do this, was a good win for everybody involved.
Can you talk a little bit about the court decision allowing the trust to be altered?
Yeah, so we made the application to the court in order to be able to vary the trust. The Attorney General's office supported our application, and the court ultimately found that I guess I should add that there was an intervener in the court case, the Mack Laing Heritage Society, who wanted to see the money used for the provision of a natural history museum. All of the arguments were forwarded to the court, and ultimately they took a look and came to the same conclusion that the town of Comox and the number of public committees that had been struck on this in the past came to, which was that the money was not enough to establish a natural history museum. And as such, I think the court felt, and this is, going a little bit beyond what the ruling was, but I think the court felt what the town felt was that if we attempted to use the trust money to do that, we wouldn't get to where we needed to get to. And ultimately, there was a good chance that that money would just be wasted in trying to accomplish something that we didn't think was financially feasible. And instead, what we have here is something that not only provides an amenity for the public, and it provides natural history and history interpretation for both Mack Laing and KFN. It's something that can stay there for a long time, and the town has committed to putting a reserve fund for capital maintenance so that this monument to his history and his gifts will last for a long time into the future. So it is about, minimal impact on the area, as well as putting a capital project in that has sustainability into the future for the public.
When it comes to the demolition of the house, Wall says that the town and council think relocation would be a great option for everyone, with a couple of conditions. The environmental impacts of moving the building could potentially be higher, and the cost will be significantly more.
The big hurdle on this is just the funding. The cost difference in moving it versus demolishing it is about $120,000 right now. I think that I have a worry that as more is learned about the complexity of the project and the state the building is actually in, that cost is going to climb. So right now there's a $120,000 gap. We're still working with the community association to see if this is something that is viable.
Wall says that until a realistic funding plan is presented, the direction from council has been to continue toward demolition, which is set to begin in September. The town of Comox and the Merville Community Association are in active talks to determine if a move is achievable.
It would be a great outcome if that's something that can happen, but if not, council feels that the project that they have in front of them is going to leave a really beautiful legacy in an area that's well used by the public, and it's going to provide a very nice amenity. So it is the hope of council and the town that this is something that can happen. There's a huge funding gap. I know the Merville Community Association has gone up to public funding on the GoFundMe account. So if people are interested, they can take a look and perhaps donate. But that is really the struggle right now is getting a barge in there into the Goose Spit area, which is very, very low water, and at low tide it actually is dry for a significant distance. So you can only do this at certain times. It's going to require a crane, potential damage to the environment to do so, and there's concerns whether the building can hold up to that type of move as well.
Wall also added that there has been some confusion in public perception that the town owns the trust money and can use it as they see fit. He says that this is not the case. Funds can only be spent as approved by the Attorney General's office and in line with the court order. He also responded to online criticism that suggested the town has misspent Mack Laing's trust money and is acting against the wishes set in his will.
Well, I can say that the money in the Mack Laing Trust has been accounted for. We have done all of the research and taken a look at how much money had been given, how it had been spent, and we made sure to make a full accounting for that, which was submitted to the court and accepted by the court. So there really is no question anymore that the money was misallocated or it's not there. The money is there. That has been reviewed and confirmed by the court. And when it comes to not respecting Mack Laing's wishes, this is where there has been a difference of opinion from some people. And I think one of the things that's important is what we have to do is something that is realistic and something that is achievable and something that is able to continue into the future. There are, some groups that wanted to ensure that the building stayed and was repurposed into a natural history museum. But the risk of that is that you start spending the money, and if you run out of the money halfway through the project and there's no more funds in order to complete it, now you have nothing. Now you have nothing that's left over, and you have nothing that can continue, and none of his hopes for that area are going to be fulfilled. I think what we have here is a project that is completely funded, that is guaranteed, if it goes over budget, to be funded by the town, is guaranteed to have a contingency reserve for its repair into the future. And Mack Laing wrote extensively about the view from his property and how spiritual and connected he was to that from it. And now everybody who visits the area, once this project is completed, is going to be able to enjoy that. So his goal was for people to enjoy nature and for people to understand nature further. And I think the project that we have is going to accomplish all of those goals. So I understand while there may be people that had wished the town had gone in another direction, I think what we have here is something that is achievable and does reflect what he wanted to see his land used for.
Whether the house is saved or not, Wall feels that the viewing platform honors Mack Laing's wishes and will be a benefit to the community.
Again, I think what we have here is a project that, blends in all of the input that we've gotten from, different community groups, because when it comes to community groups, there's the Friends of Mack Laing who are supportive of the town's position. There was a Mack Laing Heritage Society who wanted to see us go in a different way, but we also have to take a look at, Comox First Nations interests in the area and council's interests. So I think what we have is a project that does, at the end of the day, leave a legacy for Mack Laing that reflects his overall wishes and provides a public amenity that's going to be here long into the future.
The matter of the Shakesides house has been a steady topic of heated debate for many in the Comox Valley in the years since Mack Laing passed in 1982. Whether it will escape the demolition date and find a new home in Merville, only time will tell. But Craig Freeman has hope.
Well, I think it has all the possibilities of going ahead, because if there's enough money to move the building, if there's no objections from anybody who in the town of Comox saying, hey, we don't want that building moved, then there's no reason why it shouldn't be moved. Like, if there's money available, get the building out of there. So I don't believe that the town of Comox, once there's a viable plan put before them, I don't believe they can really refuse it.
These interviews were recorded in June. Since then, Craig Freeman from the Merville Community Association has said the group has all the funds committed for the move. He also alleged that the town has jumped the gun and begun demolition early, as some of the wooden siding has gone missing from the back of the building. It is possible, however, that this is the work of vandals. Jordan Wall from the town of Comox has since said that, quote, the exact timing of demolition isn't known right now, as the town won't have needed access to the site until around September, end quote. Both comments came through email. More information about the future viewing platform can be found on the town website, comox.ca, under the Development section, subheading Current Projects. More information about the Merville Community Association's proposal and a link to their GoFundMe campaign can be found at mervillehall.ca/GoFundMe. You've been listening to Midcoast Morning. For CHLY and CVox News, I'm Heather Watson.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Salish Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. If you're already a supporter, record a voice memo telling others where you're listening from and why they too should support our work. After you're done, you can email it to us. Also, share the podcast with your friends. While Meta is blocking Canadian users from sharing news content on their Facebook feeds, you can still share our podcast directly with your friends via Facebook or Instagram Messenger. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.